You're listening to tonight's edition of This Week with Tom Crandell. Mr. Producer is in the studio. Mr. Jeff, thank you very much. Once again, he's Mr. Cameraman Extraordinaire, Producer Director. And now Bubbles is not able to be on the radio tonight, but he is the new Research Director. I think that's his title. It's a good title for him, Research Director. Bubbles, thanks for all your work. We appreciate that very much. You are listening to WBCK News Talk Radio, 95.3 on the FM dial. You can also catch the show on iHeart and WBCKFM.com. That's live. Or we picked up, Mr. Producer says, Jeff, we picked up 5 likes. We're approaching 100 likes on our Facebook page, so feel free if you're a Facebooker. We don't inundate you with much. But Jeff comes up with some really good things from time to time, and occasionally I might contribute as well. The number, if you'd like to join the program tonight, is 269-441-9595. Kalamazoo Way, from which we have never received a phone call. Marshall, we have. Bedford. Galesburg. Got a loyal listener in Galesburg, likes to listen when he makes dinner, so we appreciate that. Number in Kalamazoo is 269-488-9595. We'd be happy to have you contribute to the program tonight. All right, it's June 29th, 2014. As always, I like to give due credit to military history. I like This Day in Military History segment. It's my favorite one, because those who can't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, and there are just so many, many lessons. 1502, June 29th, 1502, Christopher Columbus arrived at Santo Domingo, Hispaniola, on his 4th voyage to the New World. He requested harbor and advised Governor Nicolas de Ovando of an approaching hurricane. Of course, Ovando had his head up in his sleeve. He denied the request, and he dispatched a treasure fleet to Spain. Of course, 20 ships sank in the storm, 9 returned to port, and 1 made it to Spain. So basically, Ovando gave our treasure hunters something to look for the next 200 years. Actually, more like almost over 500 years. Oops. Kind of a boo-boo on his part. June 29, 1776. The Virginia Constitution was adopted, and Patrick Henry was made governor. Ooh, Patrick Henry. I like him. Yeah, remember him? Give me liberty or give me death? Yeah, I like Pat. He's a good guy. Here's a lesson from history. June 29, 1949. U.S. troops withdrew from Korea after World War II. Or did they? Seems to me we left a lot of troops behind. Perhaps we should have learned from that historical lesson, in which case we wouldn't maybe be in the situation we are right now, having to explain to the 4,500 plus American men and women who gave their lives, their families, on the sacrifices, the blood and the treasure. And we can argue whether the war was right or wrong, or was Bush right or wrong, or who lied to who, because the whole world thought he had weapons, and he even said he had weapons of mass destruction. But the one thing's for sure, even President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden all agreed Iraq was on solid footing when we cut and ran. We'll get it, maybe if there's time, we'll get more into that, exactly what happened there when we pulled out. June 29th, 1966, here's a lesson from history. During the Vietnam War, U.S. aircraft bombed the major North Vietnamese population centers of Hanoi and Haiphong for the first time, destroying oil depots located near the two cities. Now, that's how you win wars. We did it in Germany. We did it in Japan. We failed to do it in Korea. Of course, that war's still going. They've only signed an armistice agreement, and actually I don't think North Korea actually even signed that agreement. But that's how you win wars. In fact, that's what brought the Vietnamese back to the negotiating tables, Nixon hammering the bejesus out of them. There's a lesson there. Of course, in Japan and Germany, there was direct targeting of civilian population centers, because the warfighters knew that if you want to undercut support for the despotic regimes that run these little forays that they do, it's hard, but you punish the civilians. 1996, June 28, 1996, U.S. allies backed President Clinton's demand that Bosnian Serb leaders indicted for war crimes be forced, quote, out of power and out of influence. Now, sometimes demands to ask other foreign leaders to step down are called for. And this would have been one of them. Maybe. I just see it as another there we go again thing. I mean, the U.S. undercut South Vietnamese leadership, forcing out one dictator, getting another one. Does anybody remember Egypt and how bad Hosni Mubarak was? And then look what happened. Fortunately, the military took back control. And, basically you go on trial for 7 days and then you're hung. Syria, calling for, that was President Obama. Assad has to go. We're demanding that this leader go. We're demanding that that leader's got to go. Iraq, same thing now. We're demanding Maliki's got to resign. Seems like Bush was the one who was accused of making all these demands. And here we go again. All right. Kind of in the same vein, military history. First topic up is our military. There's some interesting things that have I caught my eye. Maybe some of you have seen this. This was an obscure article. It was in U.S. News and World Distort, I call it. U.S. Blues and World Distort. The recruiting in the military is not as easy as it used to be. It's testing our recruitment standards. But we do. We had a caller on line one. Is he there? We got a caller on line one?
Yes.
Yeah, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Chris, Battle Creek.
Hey, Chris, welcome to the program. What's on your mind?
Hey, I just wanted to point out a key piece of military history you left out.
What's that?
It's not exactly to the date because it was, now I could be mistaken, the 26th or the 27th of June, the first shots of the First World War broke out with the assassination of Archduke Austro-Hungary. King Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, and that triggered the whole start of the First World War.
I did see, Chris, spot on, by the way. It sounds like you paid attention in class. Did you pay attention in class?
Oh, I loved the First World War. It was the First World War was far worse than the Second World War. It just didn't go as long. Based on the 4.5, almost 5 years World War I raged, it was worse than the same amount of time that World War II went on. And had it gone on the same length of time, the casualties would have been far worse. And it was a violent war that was fought to a complete stalemate, and virtually nothing was accomplished.
That's exactly right. And the other thing, too, is it's very synonymous with the mass casualties in the Civil War. And basically in the Civil War, they were using 18th century fighting tactics, attacking in blocks and lines. But they were using 19th century weaponry, which was much more lethal. Well, here at World War I, they were still using kind of dogmatic military doctrine.
Very much. And they used poison gas, mustard, and sarin. It was the Battle of Verdun, in fact, went on from us. 10 months. It was the biggest military campaign ever to ever happen. And it had almost 1 million casualties in both sides. The French and the Germans kept neither side. It was at Verdun. It was like almost 850,000 casualties after 10 months of fighting.
Chris, it was brutal. In fact, I saw a trailer on the news, I think it was last night, and I caught only half of it, and it was something about the shot that started World War I, and it mentioned the Archduke Ferdinand. Do you recall the name of the last name of the assassin that actually pulled the trigger?
Yeah, yes. I want to say it was called. I don't know how to. It's someone said it's Italian style. I'm not sure. It was I want to say it was like Giuliani, or I want to say Giuliani, or something to that effect.
That might have been his first name. Princip, I think, is what his last name was.
Okay. I can see it. I can see the name. I remember when I was, written out of the art, but I can't pronounce it.
Of course, it really doesn't matter what his last name was. He pulled the trigger and did bring the whole house down, didn't he? Hey, Chris, I appreciate you listening to the show, and always happy to have you call in.
I always love it. I'm leaving work. I love listening to it.
All right. Well, we're very grateful. You ought to catch it on Comcast sometime. It's kind of fun to watch on TV.
Right on.
Chris, thanks, man. All right, Chris from Battle Creek catching us on his way home from work. Now, Chris is a worker. Chris is not afraid of showing up at his appointed time, punching a clock, and being told what to do. Now, I'm assuming he punched a clock. Maybe he didn't, but he certainly showed up for his duty. And it seems like so fewer and fewer people are willing to give up part of their life in exchange for money, in exchange for improving their standard of living, and ultimately working towards giving their children a better opportunity. Chris obviously is out there working. I mean, it's Sunday. He's just finished his shift, and it's not early in the day. And Chris, country is built on people like you. I appreciate you calling in. All right, we're going to take a break. 441-9595 if you'd like to chime in. We'd love to have you on the program. Do not go away. We'll be right back. There you go for all you gun lovers out there. Happiness is a smoking hot barrel. All right, before the break, I had just mentioned we want to continue this. I got a military segment. I'd like to touch base on a couple things. Recruits and eligibility tests the military. More than two-thirds of American youth would not qualify for service, the Pentagon says. More than two-thirds of America's youth would fail to qualify for military service because of physical, behavioral, or educational shortcomings, posing challenges to building the next generation of soldiers, even as the U.S. draws down troop levels from conflict zones. The military services don't keep figures on how many people they turn away, but the Defense Department estimates 71% of the roughly 34 million 17 to 24-year-olds in the U.S. would fail to qualify to enlist in the military if they tried. Do you remember the day and age when you got in trouble with the law? They sent you to the Army. Not anymore. They would fail to qualify to enlist in the military if they tried. A figure that doesn't even include those turned away for tattoos or other cosmetic issues. Meanwhile, only about 1% of youths are both, quote, eligible and inclined to have a conversation with us about military service. Sounds bad on the surface, but when you have 1% of 34 million, is that 340,000? Yep. And so, because I did pay attention in math class, Mom, I really, really did. 340,000 every year are eligible and inclined to have a conversation. You can build a military around those people. In fact, those are the ones you want in your foxhole. Interesting thing is, recently some rules on tattoos changed, and let's see, where is that girl? She was quite bummed out. She was quite distraught that because of a tattoo on her neck, they would not take her in. She went to another recruiting center. They turned her down there, and she was quite upset. Here we go. A few weeks ago, Brittany Crippen said she tried to enlist in the Army only to learn that a tattoo of a fish on the back of her neck disqualified her. Determined to join, good for you, the 19-year-old college student visited a second recruiting center in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and was rejected again. Apologetic recruiters encouraged her to return after removing that tattoo, a process she was told would take about a year. I was very upset, Miss Crippen said. So how about you delay a little gratification when you're young enough, before 19? Don't get the tattoos on your neck, for Pete's sake. I also understand that some forearms tattoos, generally they are, I saw this, tattoos on faces, necks, will absolutely get you kicked out here. Let's see, their parents are going to pay for her. My tattoo isn't offensive, she said. Well, one man showed up with 2 gaping holes in his earlobes as a result of wearing ear gauges. I asked Mr. Producer before the show started, what's an ear gauge? He's not very hip either, because we both had to go to Google. But we found it there. Quote, come back when they're closed, the recruiter said after jotting down the applicant's information. David Monzon, a 23-year-old East L.A. man, said he had long wanted to join the Army but wasn't able to enlist after graduating. At 5'6", he weighed 300 pounds. After researching weight loss programs, Mr. Monzon eliminated pizza, chili cheese fries, and other fatty foods from his diet, and he began riding his bike everywhere. In February, Mr. Monzon walked in the recruiting center weighing only 210 pounds. Sergeant told him he was impressed, but he still needed to drop a few more pounds due to height weight. I was pretty confident I would make it. This kid had a goal in mind. This is great. This is what made this country great. People like him. He did. Now at 190 pounds, he's heading to South Carolina for basic training. Hats off to you, Mr. Monzon. Absolutely. And poor Miss Crippen, her parents are going to pay to remove the fish tattoo. Apparently there are 3 others, but they would not get her. They would not keep her from being enlisted. And I bring this up. 340,000, they have a chart here. 28% are medical reasons, including weight and mental health. 8% drugs, 2% aptitude, 2% dependence, I don't know what the 1% conduct. This is the estimates for why this 17 to 24-year-olds wouldn't qualify for military. This does not exclude the cosmetic reasons. But you have to be between the ages of 17 and 34. You have to score a minimum. You have to give the drill sergeants, the lieutenants, and the commanders a lot of credit, because you have to score a minimum of 33 out of 99 on an Armed Forces qualification test, which assesses English, math, science, and cognitive skills. 33 out of 99? That's scary. But no felony convictions, no persistent illegal drug use, no insulin-dependent diabetics. You have to meet height, weight standards for age group. You have to be a U.S. citizen or a foreign national with legal status. No tattoos on fingers, neck, or face. No ear gauges. That's in the fatty part of your ear. No ADHD in the last medication in the last 12 months. And you have to have a high school diploma or a GED. We're coming up on the bottom of the hour. We will take a break. We'll be right back. The Independent Payment Advisory Board was created by the Affordable Care Act, and it is a board tasked with managing healthcare dollars, managing the expenses of healthcare dollars. Yeah, the president has judicial oversight, but IPAB doesn't. I'm telling you, this is scary. Mr. Producer, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who watches the show on Access Vision. Jeff and I are flattered that you would tune in and listen in. I would invite you to pay attention right on your calendar. Sundays at 6. It's live. You're welcome to call us, 441-9595. Well, if you haven't been able to tell, tonight's Beatles night here at the studio. Since there are only three of us now in the station, I'd be the head janitor. Then there's Mr. Producer, and then we have Bubbles, our research director, we will call him. And my name's Tom Crandell. You're listening to another edition of This Week with Tom Crandell on WBCK News Talk Radio. The number is 441-9595. Do like Chris. Pick up the phone. Give us a call. Love to have you on the program. Kalamazoo Way, I'm still waiting for a Kalamazoo caller. 269-488-9595. I'd like to find out what the weather is on over there. Hey, Mr. Producer's got more camera funky stuff going on. All right. I like that. Tell you, that guy is solid. We were talking before the break about the military segment. I'm investing a little time in this because my son is inducted into the Navy, I believe, Tuesday as a midshipman fourth class at the United States Naval Academy. Yes, hooah. Way to go, Michael. Everybody's proud of you. None more than me. And Rachel, I'm sure you're missing him like crazy, but I do believe it's 633 miles, not 634, if that's any consolation. But the pizza box was pretty cute, Rachel, so you're a lucky girl. And he's a pretty lucky guy, I think. But so we have some outstanding young men and women wanting to serve, wanting to give back to their country. Will they get something in return for it? Absolutely. One, just the underlying pride of knowing that you served your country. And number two is the fact that you'll get a wonderful education, a wonderful training, whether you go in as a recruit, in just regular military, you join and you become a private and away you go, or you find an academy, or you join a ROTC program. It's a great education, core values that will bring you to a point in your life where you'll be like Chris in Battle Creek, where you will work Sundays and you will sacrifice your time and you will get a paycheck and you will improve your life and you will get to a point where you're offering your children a better opportunity for their lives than you had with yours. So obviously the pickings are slim, but here, this is a piece I caught earlier this week. A former member of SEAL Team 6 has become the poster girl. That's right, I said a former member of SEAL Team 6 has become the poster girl for a Pentagon effort to include transgenders, people who have undergone sex change operations, in the ranks. Kristen Beck, formerly Senior Chief Petty Officer Christopher Beck, spoke recently at several high-profile events at intelligence agencies in the Pentagon to promote integration of transgenders. Apparently, this is a priority in the United States military from the Pentagon. Compliments of, well, obviously, the head guy in the country is President Obama. His guy, the Defense Department's Chuck Smeagol. No, Smeagol. That was from, I'm sorry, that's Smeagol. That's from The Hobbit. This is Chuck Hagel. I'm sorry, Chuck. Got your name wrong. Quote, transgender service in the armed forces, yes, it will happen soon, Kristen said. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, among the most politically correct Pentagon chiefs in the past several decades, fueled the effort within the Pentagon to integrate transgenders in May when he said the policy of banning transgenders should be reviewed continually. The transgender drive is the latest element of the Obama administration's social engineering within the U.S. military, where in fact Bibles are banned, but the soldiers must follow Ramadan rules. Social engineering. The Pentagon currently defines transgenders as sexual deviants. That, I think, might be beyond reason, but this Miss Beck, recent appearances were speeches at Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Reconnaissance Office, and Hill Air Force Base in Utah. She also has a Twitter feed, so she's got somebody following her. She was scheduled to speak at the there's a circuit where this Kristen Beck, formerly Senior Chief Petty Officer, what do you think about this? What do you think about this political correctness, this push to socially engineer our military. 441-9595. I really would like a different opinion if you have one. Perhaps you'll just echo ours here. But I'm torn. I certainly wouldn't want to discriminate against transgenders. I suppose, whether you've had the change operation or not, if you meet the requirements, I'm not sure why you shouldn't join. Shouldn't be allowed to join. That's the other side of this argument. I know the Westboro Baptist Church people out in the middle of the country, they hate all soldiers, and they're glad when any of them die. So we can't look to that supposedly Christian right. They're not Christian right. They're wacko. They're just nuts. But this Miss Beck is pushing for allowing transgenders in uniform. And that brings us up to the next political correctness. We show of hands. Who's ever heard about the Washington Redskins? I have. And show of hands, who's ever heard of the outcry of why they have to change their name now? Because a couple of people are offended. Except most studies show that Native Americans are not offended. But regardless, it's not politically correct now. And Harry Reid, he promised he'd never go to a Redskins football game until they change the name. So hopefully they'll be able to sell that cheap seat. This comes from the Washington Times. The Army's Apache helicopter is under assault from the PC police. They're calling the helicopter's name racist. Now, this comes from Douglas Ernst, the Washington Times, on Friday, June 27th. Veterans aren't happy with a recent op-ed by the Washington Post, which charged that the Apache, the Comanche, the Chinook, the Lakota, the Cheyenne, and the Kiowa military vehicles were a, quote, greater symbolic injustice, unquote, than the NFL's Washington Redskins name. Even if the NFL and Redskins brass came to their senses and renamed the team, a greater symbolic injustice would continue to afflict Indians, an injustice perpetuated not by a football club but by our federal government, said Simon Waxman of the Boston Review, who wrote this op-ed for the Post. He added that the helicopter names were propaganda that needed to end because Native American life expectancy statistics indicate the violence is ongoing even if the guns are silent. What the heck does that have to do with anything? Readers at the popular military news gathering website Doctrine Man reacted Friday. Quote, I suspect that the author is less unhappy that our choppers have Indian names and more unhappy that there is a U.S. military, wrote one. Another wrote, what floors me is that for the most part, it isn't American Indians who are offended. It is guilt-ridden white liberals being offended on their behalf. How's that for paternalism? Even the website's moderator weighed in, saying that the names the military chooses for weapon platforms are anything but derogatory. They convey strength, honor, and courage. And that was my first thought. Is the Army's Apache helicopter? A good friend of ours owns a hardware store in Indiana. His brother is an Apache pilot. And our enemies fear the Apache helicopter. If you've ever watched the movie Lone Survivor, yeah, Mr. Producer, have you seen that? Okay. When those Taliban see the Apaches coming over that ridge, they run and they were laid to waste. The Apache just oozes power and respect, and it should be a point of pride. But the PC police have run amok. All right. We see that the Abu Khattab has hit U.S. soil. First thing he did is pleaded not guilty. And there's multiple hearings coming up in the next few days. It's too bad they just didn't take him to Gitmo. That would have been a nice thing. But if you have a thought on this terrorist, because really he's being charged, I heard a snippet of the charge. He's not being charged with terrorism. He's being charged with a federal crime of attacking a federal facility. Of course, they're resulting in deaths. So he's a criminal. We're back to treating terrorists like criminals, the same way President Clinton did. Let's snatch him. Let's bring him here. Let's give him a lawyer. Let's convict him. We will. We'll probably convict him. It'll take several years. There'll be all kinds of appeals. and theatrics in the courtroom. Would you like to see him in court with his theatrics? 441-9595. Do you think this is the right thing? 441-9595. Or would you mete out other justice? Would you do something else? I heard the chief medical officer from Gitmo is out. He wrote a book, and he is saying pretty basic stuff. These are enemy combatants. They're not prisoners of war, and they are not criminals. They've been deemed enemy combatants. And he lived with them for years down there at Gitmo. He's pretty blunt. Until we kill them all, or until we remove their means of making war, or until we remove their will of making war on non-believers, we need a safe and secure place to keep them, to cage them up. And it's not our federal court system, and it's not our federal prison system. It's Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. I like that guy. All right. I do have some good news. It's been so bleak lately. And I know all Americans, Democrat or Republican, are happy to see enemies of this country be removed from the battlefield. I'll just say it. We like to see our enemies removed from the battlefield. This comes from Beirut, published June 29th today by the Associated Press. Syrian activists say up to 7,000 people, mostly rebels fighting to overthrow Bashir Assad, have been killed in infighting among rival Islamic groups across the opposition-held territory in the north. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says it has documented 7,000 deaths as a result of the rebel-on-rebel violence since it erupted in northern Syria in January. You go, guys. It's like the World Soccer. Here we got the World Terrorist Organization, and they don't bite each other, they shoot each other. The observatory says its activists on the ground have the names of 5,641 rebels who have been killed. The names of another 1,200 dead fighters have not been confirmed. The death toll also includes 650 civilians who got caught in the crossfire of the al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front and its rival group, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. That would be the ISIL people raising havoc in Iraq right now. It's like Josh Bolton. Josh Bolton is a former UN Secretary, recess appointment by Bush. The Democrat-controlled House and Senate wouldn't appoint him during a real recess appointment. President Bush appointed him. Very smart guy. He says, stay out of Iraq. We have Maliki, an Iranian puppet. As soon as we pulled out, our military, Maliki's willingness to include Sunni and Kurds in his government, and he was flush with Sunni and Kurds at the time. He was flush with them in his government. They were being included. It was not possible. We pull out, and Maliki realizes he needs help. He starts to lean on Iran. Of course, the Iranians don't like the Sunnis because they're Shia, and of course Maliki started to do their bidding a little bit. It's all subtle, but they were kicked out of his government, and he's laid this groundwork. And this was literally we took away his intelligence gathering capabilities, and Maliki became an Iranian puppet. And Josh Bolton says, look, if we help Maliki, we're helping Iran. If we help the terrorists, well, then we're helping the terrorists. And since we don't have any national interest in helping terrorists, and we don't have any national interest in helping the Iranians, because, in fact, they're the biggest threat to the American interests in the Middle East right now, with all their sponsorship. Soon they'll have the bomb, and we'll all wonder if they're going to use it on Israel. But since we don't have national interest in either party, we should stay out of it. Nope. We get a president who does just what he complained about Bush, pushing his weight around, throwing his power around. What little power he has left because he's made too many red lines, but he's called for Maliki to resign. John Kerry, Lurch, has called for him to resign. Here we are pontificating around the world. We like you, we don't like you, you're gone. We did that in Egypt and completely disrupted that country. We did it in Syria, but failed because Assad's still in power, but he only controls half his country now. But we have 7,000 dead terrorists in Syria. And I say, I'm sorry, but I say it's good news. All right, what's up next? We're coming up on a break here in about 30 seconds. Oh, we got a Econ 101 segment coming up. We're going to talk about employment growth since 2000 and where that went to and how that ties in with Miss Nancy Pelosi down on the border. And, there's this talk of a war on women, more like a war on our pocketbooks. And then a question, why do Democrats like to run from their riches? Do not go away. We'll be right back. The number's 441-9595. Please give us a call. Join the program. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Tina at CTI Mechanical.
Yeah, open up your eyes, everyone, but pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. All right, everybody, my name's Tom Crandell. You are catching us in the last segment of tonight's edition of This Week with Tom Crandell, Mr. Producer. You can catch the show on Comcast Tuesdays at 9, Saturdays at 5, channel 16 and 916. I finally got that. ATTU versus channel 100. 99. It's 100 minus 1. And same times, Tuesday at 9, Saturdays at 5. Also the YouTube channel This Week with Tom Crandell, and also the Facebook page with Tom Crandell. All right, we're talking about employment real quick. I'm going to get in this. All employment growth since 2000 went to immigrants. Get this. These two researchers using data from BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, found that there were 127,000 fewer working-age natives holding a job in the first quarter of 2014 than in 20,000, and then in 2000. In 14 years, there were 127,000 fewer working-age natives, that's natural-born citizens, holding a job in the first quarter of 2014 than in 2000, while the number of immigrants with a job was 5.7 million above the 2000 level. Most of the jobs since the recession ended and before this new recession is starting went to immigrants. The rapidity with which immigrants recovered from the Great Recession, as well as the fact that they held a disproportionate share of jobs relative to their share of the population growth before the recession, helps to explain their findings. An author's report. In addition to they were affected differently. Here we go. Other significant findings include, because the native-born population grew significantly, but the number working actually fell, there were 17 million more working-age natives not working in the first quarter of 2014 than in 2000. The share of natives working or looking for work, referred to as labor force participation, shows the same decline as the employment rate. In fact, the labor force participation has continued to decline for working-age natives even after the jobs recovery began in 2010. The supply of potential workers is enormous. 8.7 million native college graduates are not working, as are 17 million with some college. 25.3 million with no more than a high school degree. There's three conclusions they're drawing from this. First, the long-term decline in the employment for natives across age and education levels is a clear indication that there is no general labor shortage, which is a primary justification for the large increases in immigration. Chamber of Commerce wants immigration because there aren't enough workers. Corporations want immigration amnesty because there aren't enough workers. Nancy Pelosi, she doesn't even want borders. She figures everybody, she just said this. I'll pull the article right here out of order because I'm going to talk about this in a minute. Nancy Pelosi, let's see, It's a humanitarian opportunity. Never let a crisis go to waste. She says that, let's see, here it is. Yep, there it is. This is a community where let's see, this is a community with a border going through it, and this crisis that some call a crisis, we have to view as an opportunity. She said we're all Americans. Central Americans, South Americans, North Americans, we're all Americans. We don't need a border. We need you here. What makes me want to vomit is she actually made a quote here. What we just saw was so stunning. This is when she toured the children. If you believe as we do, that every child, that every person has a spark of divinity in them and is therefore worthy of respect, what we saw in those rooms was dazzling, sparkling array of God's children, worthy of respect. So we have to use the crisis that some view as a crisis, and it does have crisis qualities, as an opportunity to show who we are as Americans, that we do respect people for their divinity and their worth. Well, couldn't we respect their divinity and their worth, like by getting the kids back to their parents? That's no thought. And I don't, she says there's a border running through our community. Okay. I think there's a border with her between the unborn and the born. Somehow, children who are born are divine and worthy, but those who haven't taken their first breath, not so much. So, second, the decline in work among the native-born over the last 14 years of high immigration is consistent with research showing that immigration reduces employment for natives. So our African-American listeners, our black listeners, look at the unemployment rate in your communities. 50% in teenagers. It's your community. You have to stand up and stop supporting the people who want to flood the job market with people who are going to take jobs from your community. The third conclusion, the trends since 2000 challenge the argument that immigration on balance increases job opportunities for natives. What a stupid idea that is. Over 17 million immigrants arrived in the country in the last 14 years, yet native employment has deteriorated significantly. This is all smoke and mirrors. It's a crisis. It's an opportunity for them, for the Democrats, to get more votes. Yeah, see, we're not going to get to the Democrat and the income thing. We'll touch on President Obama and his phony scandals next time. Martin Armstrong warned civil unrest is rising everywhere. This won't end pretty. This comes out of England. The exploitation by the bankers has been, this is in England, been a real disaster. They have been their own worst enemy in the world, and they have become a symbol that inspires class warfare, if not revolution. He goes on to say the solutions from politics will always be the same. Grab more power. We're in a downward spiral of liberty, and how far we go down this path to the future will be determined by the people, and if they at least wise up and see that this is not class warfare, it is the people against government. That is why I say career politicians are dangerous, for they can be bought way too early and way too easily, and it's not going to end pretty. And in fact, Bubbles did get us a piece from Bloomberg. We'll talk about that next show. Chris, thanks for calling. Others, thanks for listening. It's going to be a hot week. Turn the air conditioners on. When the storms cramp up, fill your tub with water. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.